so currently, here's what's going on in the world of MMA. This is your host, Chadillac, at the Cage Rage podcast. All kinds of cool stuff happening today in MMA. I'm here with my co-host and fight analyst, Miguel. Miguel, we've got all kinds of crazy stuff happening. Hey, we called it, right? 3 or 4 days ago, we posted our podcast, and we said that Askren was coming to the UFC, Mighty Mouse, that Demetrius was going to ONE. We talked about GSP coming back. We talked about Anderson Silva, the Spider, coming back. We talked about Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, Khabib, all of this big mixture of stuff that's going on right now that's gone crazy. Never mind DC, Lesnar, and Lewis. Talk to me right now about what's going on with the switch from UFC and ONE. What's the trade?
Well, as we mentioned, it was beginning to happen. Now it's official. You got Demetrius Johnson going over to ONE. That means he's been released from his UFC contract, and they get to renegotiate. Ben Askren getting released from his ONE contract and coming over to the UFC. Dana White acknowledging this. Dana White saying that Askren comes in and gets a top 5 opponent right away. And that's about what we talked about. You know what I mean?
Hey, Miguel, any numbers on that? Any dollar figures on those?
I don't have any dollar figures that I've seen. I can tell you that Demetrius Johnson's happy. I think he's going to get a chance to fight more. I think ONE very well may have come forth with some money. At the end of the day, you know, with ONE, you're talking about a franchise that's been there now, you know, for dozens and dozens of events. So, you know, in the very beginning, there were some naysayers, or, you know, myself included. I wondered if they'd have legs, you know, especially with in the beginning when they were bringing in international talent, like, you know, the Brandon Vieras and things like that. You wonder if they were going to have legs. But at this point, I think they have a good business model, and they're going to,
yeah.
You know, I know that the owner is a wise man. I know that, you know, he went out and got Matt Hume, who I consider, you know, the best in the business, really.
The Wizard.
To be one of his, you know, operations people. So I think, you know, I think Matt's taking care of his guy here, DJ. There's a little bit of, you know, the question of business and stuff like that, but they operate in Asia. I don't think, you know, I'm not too worried about it. What I'd like to see is, and I don't think this is a worry, I'd like to see DJ get some money, and I'd like to see him get paid.
I would like to see that too.
You know, in a way, maybe beyond the UFC. I'd like to see him get some hard fights. I think what makes it exciting for me is that it's an all-new roster. You know what I mean? And
right.
He should dominate.
Yeah, so, hey, Miguel, when you look at Demetrius and who he fights first, any ideas on that? I know that's a big question. That's a really hard one to tackle. Do you have any ideas on who that's going to be? Yeah, I'm not totally up on my ONEFC 125-pounders like that. But I do know that they've always kept a good, you know, ethnic mix of fighters there. That sure.
They use fighters from the Philippines, that they use fighters from China, you know, that they're using fighters from Asia. And I think that that's very important, because I think that that is what gives Demetrius Johnson a challenge. It's going back to almost that old school challenge in MMA where, you know, hey, I'm fighting a dude today, but I'm not quite sure, you know, I've never seen him or anything like that. That's interesting, because in the UFC that no longer ever happens. Even if it's a late replacement, you've seen the dude, you know who you're fighting.
I know something.
Seen the guy fight, you know? So I think that could be an interesting X factor. Obviously, DJ's probably going to get tapes on everybody and be given some privilege, but
yeah.
You know, it's still interesting for him. And I think
that's
a good way to go.
Well, here's hoping that DJ does great. I'm a big fan. Matt Hume is the most classy, most assertive, brilliant MMA-minded human being on the planet, probably at this point. If not, he's damn close. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think Matt's, you know, one probably at the forefront of Americans who should be respected for, you know, I think if you consider his generation, you know, I think Ken Shamrock kind of, you know, let himself go and became a little bit of a laughing stock. I think,
yeah.
You know, Frank Shamrock, you know, never sort of continued his career. Always was a tease that he'd come back and sort of left it hanging there. And you're left with a lot of questions. Hume doesn't have a lot of fights, but he never left the business kind of thing. And you know, I think you got to respect him for that. And the fighters he's brought along.
Okay, so next on the docket then. So we got the big trade. So Askren's here. Okay. What happens? I mean, we talked about it, but now put it on the line. Put your reputation on the line. Let's hear it. What's it gonna be?
Well, you know, there's news out there and stuff. So I thought they might do the StPierre thing. Here's the thing: is I don't know that StPierre comes back. I think StPierre is at this point a guy who's banked enough money, and God bless him. You know,
not for Askren.
You know, he doesn't really have to. And StPierre, I think, is one of those guys who, you know, he's invested his money. He's going to be making money. I don't think he needs the McGregor rush of having 100 million and that whole thing. So I think StPierre is a guy there. But at the same time, StPierre is not going to come back and fight Tyrone Woodley, right? And I think he should. If it was a real comeback, that's what he should do. And I think it would go poorly for him because he's older now, right? So StPierre is the guy I thought that Askren made sense to matchmaking with, but Askren really is a guy who doesn't really have a lot of Q score. You know, he doesn't have a lot of name recognition yet. So I think he comes in, and they're talking about now having him fight Darren Till. I think that's a good choice. Till's a tough kid. He's from England, not a wrestler.
That fight goes badly for Till. That fight's that's a 3-round snore fest of Askren absolutely handing him his ass.
Can Ben actually get to the point where, you know, it's all right to win fights. You know, you could be A.J. McKee. I know A.J. McKee's son is out there doing real well for him, and I'm rooting for the kid. And I remember his dad. His dad was definitely a physical handful for people to fight, but not blessed with crowd pleasing as a descriptor.
Right.
And that's the thing that's going to be with Ben, because you know you can only put out so many snooze fests in the UFC. So that's what I'm interested to see, is Till the right opponent. Yeah, I think, you know, within what they're doing, I think they're giving him a good top 5 opponent. I think, you know,
well, that's a given.
Call. And if Till breaks through and beats Askren, you know, Till's a solid kid, you know, then you know, the next matchup becomes very interesting, because
so first of all, do you feel like is Till, is that the Askren fight? Is that his first fight in? Because I don't think so.
Who talk to me? What do you want to talk about? Well, that's what I've heard out there. I don't know. I think
their smarter fight is to bring Lawler back and let Lawler fight Till. Because I think that's an exciting fight. I think that's a great match, and I think they put Askren in and they let him fight. I mean, he can't fight. I don't think GSP takes that fight no matter what. Otherwise, I think that's the fight, and I think that's the guy that beats GSP. But you can't let Askren come in and fight Woodley right away. So who does that leave? Dos Anjos?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put my glasses on. We'll head out there and check.
I think Dos Anjos is the fight, and I think that's Askren holds him up against the fence and beats the tar out of him, and I think that puts the final staple in Dos Anjos' coffin, really, as it were. Because I think he's one foot in the grave, as it were. He's a great fighter. I'm not trying to disrespect him, but I think he's done as far as his marketability is concerned. I don't see the UFC making a lot more money on him. I think they've got him on a couple of fights yet, and so they're going to use him to pump up some new blood.
Okay, I mean, that's all respectable and speculation. There's no problem with any of what you said. Askren does present them with a little bit of a matchmaking issue. You know, StPierre it might have to be talked into doing that fight. I think Askren brings a lot of chops with him that StPierre might accept. In other words, that the guy's enough of a challenge that StPierre might say, yeah, but I can beat him because I'm more of an MMA guy. I'm more of a this. I'm less of a wrestler. So maybe if they can be talked into that match, I don't think you're at the end of the world. You know what I mean? But if not, then let's see. What do we got in the top 5? You got Colby Covington. I don't think they're going to sacrifice that big mouth.
That can't happen. Yet.
Dos Anjos is sitting there. Lawler's sitting there. Both of those guys are veterans. It would depend on, you're talking about them matching each other up. That makes sense. You're talking about whether do they owe them fights? Do they have contract fights? Or are they going to negotiate again? They're going to have to bring in somebody for Askren, right? The next guy, as far as Short Dog's rankings, is Rory McDonald, who's over at Bellator, so he doesn't count. Douglas Lima over at Bellator, he doesn't count. And you got Darren Till. I was going to say Wonder Boy,
that might be, maybe that's how they bring Wonder Boy back, right?
Wonder Boy come back and fight Ben Askren? You think Wonder Boy's going to be happy?
I wouldn't think so, but I mean, does he have a choice?
No. You guys, Dana's proven that you kind of got to take the fight and stuff like that. But Askren is an interesting ad. It's an interesting ad, and I wonder, the deal with ONE. I don't think we're going to see a lot of this. I do think there's a possibility we might see this in some of the women's fights, perhaps. Where they let some talent go to other places.
They kind of need to do that.
But I don't think we see a lot of this, right? So I think it's an elegant way to add Askren. It gets rid of whatever happened behind the scenes, right? Because it's not like, what are they going to do if Askren and the UFC don't come to a contract, right? Does he go back to ONE? Is the UFC stuck with him? Do they have to sign him? Is there a minimum that who knows what the real details are? But
I haven't seen any details on it yet.
So it's going to be interesting. I think the Till fight or Stephen Thompson, those fights make sense. Lawler might be a better test for Askren.
There's talk of that.
And I think the thing about Lawler to me is, more so than any of the other guys, Lawler won't flinch at that fight. Lawler will be all right, sure.
I'll fight him.
I think Thompson would have to say, fuck, another. I don't want to go against a wrestler. Dos Anjos they'd all do the job. I don't really know them to talk about their mindset for it. Maybe we're giving Askren too much respect, and they all think, well, I'm gonna fucking kill him.
Hey, you know what? We may all be wrong. We may all be dead wrong on that too, because we've seen a lot of people come into the UFC who look really fucking great overseas, and when they get here, all of a sudden that octagon door closes and they fall apart.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing with Askren. Askren's gotten himself, with his mouth and with his resume, into a tough spot, right? So if he loses the first fight, I match him tough for the second time.
Yeah.
So if he couldn't handle Thompson, who's ranked number 8, then see how he does with Lawler next, who's ranked number 3. And Lawler's, he doesn't get to bounce back soft. With all the talking.
There's no soft landings for him. He's going to get the Alvarez treatment for sure.
And so if he doesn't win, he needs to be matched tough for the second time in. That's the way I would do it with Askren and pay him. I think Ben's a soldier. As long as you're paying him and he's getting his money, I think he'll be all right with competition. I think he's okay with it. But that's the way I would challenge.
So here's a problem: Mighty Mouse and Cejudo are 1-1. Do they let Mighty Mouse go over there and beat everybody up in one and hope that happens, and then try and bring him back for a super fight and try and do a ONE UFC super fight? Somehow mix Askren into that and do that. Everybody always used to talk about the Pride and UFC thing, and it never really happened. They kind of Chuck went over there that one time, and there was a little mix here and there, but not a lot of mixing up. And then everybody from Pride had to pass drug tests and they all got beat up when they came over here?
No, I don't. I don't see a lot of interchange or a lot of stuff like that happening. What I see, yeah. We'll put it this way: if something happens and DJ comes back, they've got the Cejudo fight there. My opinion is Cejudo is probably going to head north to 135, and that'll vacate. That takes the two top guys out of the division. That kind of gives you a little bit of a nice place.
Yeah.
Maybe to look for some new talent. They've never really filled out that division the way they filled out some of the others. In the States and things, maybe the weight class isn't that, formidable. But, I think once they head into Latin America and if they're going to, tap, the other spots where they can find fighters there and they can come
in
back.
Asia, I mean.
Yeah, right. If they're going to, does that turn into something where, maybe some guys from the top shelves of ONE at the 125-pound wind up in UFC, maybe challenging for the belt? We'll see if they get that level of creative. But what I think you're seeing is the admission that Johnson was, kind of a once-in-a-lifetime type of athlete. Cejudo finally broke through to beat him. There's a lot of people, I'm not sure, Cejudo didn't exactly run him over either. You know what I mean?
I didn't think, I thought he won, but I thought he won by one takedown. And
so, I'm not, Cejudo got schooled in the first fight and, got taught what a real fight is.
Yep. He came out with a smart game plan and stuck to it the second time.
Yeah, the third fight isn't all that interesting. I think DJ's moved on. I think we lose that fight. I think Cejudo moves to 135.
So there's 125, 135, 145, and we've hit 170. What have we got left? What's the other big announcement that you want to hit then?
Well, the last thing that's there, and I don't like the fight. I don't like the fight because but they are talking about Khabib StPierre now. And,
I hate that.
I thought, because of the weight classes and stuff, they could be kept apart. Sure, Khabib, you could do that with. He's got to serve a suspension, so, figure it's going to be September, October of next year when we see that fight. StPierre will sit. He'll wait.
Hey, what's on the suspension? Since he's suspended and he's in Russia, what is USADA's duty to him in that suspension? How much when they're under suspension, do they still have to be tested? Where's that at right now?
I'm not 100% sure on all the procedures there when they're all fight and on fight. I think there's just some distinctions there. But my understanding is once you signed up for the program, that you are susceptible to the random drug test at any point. So Khabib could be home, but and they could show up at his doorstep and ring the bell and ask him for to draw blood or whatever it is that they do. So. I think you still got to be careful with that. You still want to, you don't want to burn bridges. You don't want to give them any more of a reason. Right now you've caused, if you're Khabib, right now you've caused a little bit of a ripple because, like I said it, I think I put it perfectly correctly in one of the other podcasts, and that is that Khabib is morally right here. In terms of, if anybody deserved to fucking get slapped in the fucking noggin, and that was McGregor after all the talk he did. And McGregor's team, how dare you talk and not be McGregor? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, McGregor, it's like, how dare you, you always hate that teammate who's not going to be the guy getting in the cage.
Yeah.
And not going to be doing any of that stuff. But yeah, he's the guy with the mouth, right? So I don't know. I don't know if that was the exact interplay, but I do know that Khabib, for me, first and foremost, was offended. He looked offended and like he had been disrespected.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing to me that needs to be mended because he's in the right, Yeah. So is offering the StPierre fight something that, gives him a huge payday and helps you move on? And the thing I like about it, too, is that now we've talked about a couple of guys and Ben Askren and this and no Conor McGregor talk.
Yeah,
you know, Conor could
yeah. And I guess what I'm wondering is this: where do they do? Because, man, I mean, GSP is huge now. There's no way that he can make a catch weight, so they have to do it at 70. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I like that fight anymore or not. You know, I thought about it and I thought, man, it looks really cool on paper, and there's a lot of really great things about it. And as I get closer to looking at it, I start to not like it because it starts to look a whole lot like Hollywood to me, and it really kind of takes away what Khabib is. I don't think it does anything for GSP. If he loses, you know, he's already done, and he was old and blah, blah, blah. If he wins, he beats a guy that's smaller than him that he should have beat in the first place, and so it doesn't really matter. And so in a lot of ways, I think that's a pretty hard sell for GSP, but if they pay him enough, you know, if the money's right, hey, that's the old saying, you know, follow the money, like you say, and if the money's right, we'll do it, right? So anything else you want to hit? Well, we just wanted to hit a slam real quick here and do a current affairs. Anything else you want to hit on this one?
Yeah, it was good to catch up and, you know, patch some things together. UFC's definitely got, you know, some roster changes at 170 and stuff. Again, we talked about Ben Askren coming aboard. We talked about what they're going to be doing with his matchmaking and a couple of the other guys. One of the things that didn't come up in this podcast much, Conor McGregor. So UFC's got some things we'll be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, my money is Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, the next fight for McGregor. That's my money. You can take that one to the bank, and you'll probably lose because I don't know shit. But anyway, hey, thanks, Miguel. You got anything to add before we cut out of here?
Namaste.
Peace beyond passion. Namaste. Thanks, guys. See y'all later.
Up there. Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here.